Hi everyone, I'm Xiaoqing from Susan's family. Today, I'll be showing you the Wind Whispers Qing Hanfu. It consists of the front piece, back piece, sleeves, connection, collar and decorations. First, we'll knit the front and back pieces, as well as the sleeves separately. Once completed, we'll connect the different fabric pieces. Then pick up stitches around the neckline to knit the collar. Finally, make and attach the decorations. The garment comes in multiple sizes. The knitting method is identical, only the stitch count and row count are slightly different. Moving forward, I'll use the small size as an example. Any differences for other sizes will be explained separately. Let's start by knitting the front piece. It is divided into the hem, body, and shoulder parts. Use the left-handed long tail cast on method to cast on, then knit these 3 sections back and forth. Now let's take a look at the chart. The chart is for teaching purposes only. Please follow the actual project you have in hand. The chart has a grid pattern. One grid in the chart represents 1 stitch, which corresponds to 1 loop when knitting. Blank areas like this are either omitted parts or gaps formed by decreasing stitches. When counting the number of stitches in each row, count the number of grids, then match it with the quantity on your straight needle. The numbers on the side of the chart indicate row numbers. Arrows show the direction of knitting. When the arrow indicates a right to left direction, it means you're working it on the right side. And the chart is also read from right to left. When the arrow indicates a left to right direction, it means you're working it on the wrong side. Similarly, the chart is read from left to right. When working it on the wrong side, you need to use the opposite stitch technique. The stitches used in knitting here will all be marked accordingly on the chart. I won't go through each one individually. Below, please watch me demonstrate the specific method. First, we'll work the hem. Here, the hem has 2 textures, garter stitch and stoching stitch. I've divided it into 2 sections. Start by casting on for section 1. For convenience in watching, the subsequent tutorial will use cotton yarn for demonstration. Colors are random. For specific yarn, color schemes, and hook sizes, refer to the detail page of our product and the paper instructions. Start by casting on. Pay attention. The video primarily demonstrates the technique. For the exact stitch count, please refer to the chart. Now, let's show the demonstration. The long tail cast on method. Before casting on, you need to leave a tail of a certain length. It's usually about 3 times the length of the fabric piece. For the exact length, refer to the chart. Tie the yarn tail into a loose knot. Hold a straight needle or one end of a circular needle with your right hand, and insert it into the loop. Slightly tighten it. This is the first stitch. The left hand holds the 2 strands of yarn. Insert your thumb and index finger between these 2 strands. Pay attention. The strand connected to the ball of yarn rests on the index finger. The reserved long tail rests on the thumb. Straighten the yarn. Insert the needle upwards through the loop on your thumb. Then pick up the yarn from behind to front on your index finger. Pass the yarn through the loop on your thumb. Release the yarn from your thumb. Slightly tighten it. This is the second stitch. Now start the third stitch. Straighten the yarn. Insert the needle upwards through the loop on your thumb. Then pick up the yarn from behind to front on your index finger. Pass the yarn through the loop on your thumb. Release the yarn from your thumb. Slightly tighten it. The third stitch is now complete. Continue to start the fourth stitch. First, insert the needle into the loop on your thumb. Then pick up the yarn on your index finger. And pass it through the loop on your thumb. Release the yarn from your thumb. Slightly tighten it. The fourth stitch is now complete. Pay attention. The yarn connecting to the skein should always be on your index finger. The reserved yarn should be on your thumb. Don't switch their positions. Repeat this process. Continue casting on. Cast on until you reach the desired number of stitches. This is the long tail cast on method. After completing the cast on, start working row 1. Turn the work over. Place the yarn tail on the right side. Read this row of the chart from left to right. This indicates working on the wrong side. You need to work the opposite stitch pattern shown in the chart. If the symbol in the chart is a purl stitch, work the opposite, which is a knit stitch. Then, with the long yarn tail for casting on, work the corresponding knit stitches. If the other yarn tail is too long, you can trim it shorter, but leave it for now. Finish the last stitch. The first row is now complete. Continue with the second row. Turn your work. For this row, read the chart from right to left. This indicates working on the right side. Simply work the stitches according to the chart. Here, the symbol in the chart is a knit stitch, so work knit 1 by 1 accordingly. After completing the last stitch, the second row is done. Next, work the third row. Turn your work. This row is worked in the same way as the first row. Read the chart from left to right. This means working on the wrong side. You need to work the opposite stitches. Correspondingly, work knit stitches. Finish with the last stitch. The third row is now complete. At this point, section 1 is finished. Continue to work on section 2. Work the entire section in stocking stitch pattern. Start with row 1. Turn your work. For this row, read the chart from right to left. Work on the right side. Simply work knit stitches. Complete with the last stitch. The first row is now complete. Proceed to the second row. Turn your work. We will work this row on the wrong side. You need to work purl stitches. Match each stitch accordingly. Finish with the last stitch. The second row is now complete. For the remaining rows of section 2, the odd-numbered rows will be worked on the right side. Simply knit the stitch patterns corresponding to the chart. Even-numbered rows are worked on the wrong side. You will need to work the stitches opposite to what is shown in the chart. The rest can be completed by yourselves. At the same time, here, the short yarn tail is located on the side of the fabric piece that faces left. It is the right side of the entire fabric. When counting the row numbers here, make sure the right side of the fabric is facing you. Find the topmost row of the garter stitch pattern. From the raised horizontal bar, find a braid above it. This is the braid from row 3 of section 1. Starting from a braid above, this is row 1 of section 2. Each braid represents one row. The loops on the needle also count as one row. For example, in my sample swatch, there is one braid at this point, plus the loops on the needle. Section 2 has a total of 2 rows completed. This is the way to count the row numbers. After finishing the knitting, you can refer to the chart and put together the dimension of the stocking stitch pattern and fit well. If the dimensions differ significantly, it's recommended to adjust your tension or change the hook size and reknit. That concludes the explanation of hem knitting for now. Next, we will knit the body section. Here, 2 patterns need to be knitted. You'll also need to use 2 colors for knitting separately. This involves the intarsia knitting technique. Let's start with row 1. Here, I'll continue demonstrating with a sample swatch. In this row, you need to change colors. Pick up the corresponding color yarn. Tie a knot with the yarn tail from the hem. Leave the tail slightly longer here, for convenience when weaving in ends later. Then move the knot and tail end to the bottom of the loops. Then, leave a long yarn tail for the hem and break the yarn. For now, leave the tail without handling it. Knit 1 stitch and knit stitch next. Pay attention to keeping the knot and tails on the wrong side of the fabric. The number of stitches for small and large sizes will differ slightly moving forward. However, the stitch techniques used are identical. For the small size, continue knitting the corresponding number of knit stitches. For the large size, start the pattern stitch from the second stitch. Here, I'll demonstrate using the small size as an example. You can learn the method first for the large size, then proceed with knitting according to the corresponding chart. For the small size, continue knitting 8 knit stitches downward. Then knit 1 stitch with a yarn over. Bring the yarn from below upwards and place it on the right needle. This completes a yarn over. Next, knit a left slanting decrease. From now on, we'll call this SPO. First, pick up the first stitch on the left needle, as if to knit but don't knit it. Move it to the right needle. Then pick up and knit 1 stitch on the left needle. Next, cover the next stitch with the slipped stitch. Complete the SPO. Then continue knitting 7 knit stitches. Next, knit a yarn over. Afterward, knit the SPO again. Continue following the chart for the rest of the knitting. Keep knitting until you reach the position before the change to another color. From now on, my sample will mainly demonstrate the stitch techniques. Refer to the chart for the exact stitch count at each position. Next, you'll reach the area of another color block. Then knit the stocking stitch pattern. At the same time, you need to change colors. The next row in this area will still use the current yarn. Leave the yarn tail here. For convenience in explanation, I will call the starting yarn, color 1. Then, according to the chart, pick up the yarn corresponding to the color block. Here, I will call the new yarn, color 2. Tie a knot between color 2 and the end of color 1. Move to the bottom of the loop. Here, leave color 1 in place for now without handling it. Continue knitting with color 2 for the corresponding number of knit stitches. Finish knitting this color's area. After completing the corresponding color section, you will need to knit a different pattern next. At the same time, switch to another color. Here, you need to use the color of color 1. You can take a new ball of color 1 and join the yarn. Or you can also use the skein of color 1 from before. Take another yarn tail and join the yarn. There is one tail on both the surface and the center of the yarn ball. Similarly, tie a knot to join the yarn. Then, continue knitting according to the chart using the newly joined color 1. Leave color 2 in place. After finishing the last stitch, the method for the first row is now complete. Next, knit the second row. Turn your work. Since there are many hanging threads on the fabric here, after turning, pay attention to tidying up the yarn ball. Start by still using color 1 for knitting. Follow the chart and keep knitting until you reach the area for color 2. When you encounter positions with hanging threads, simply pick the corresponding loops and knit the required stitches. Be mindful not to drop any stitches. I have finished the area for color 1 on my sample here. Moving forward, color 2 will be needed for knitting. From beneath the current color 1, pick up the tail of color 2. Start knitting. This way, the two yarns are effectively crossing each other. Place color 1 in its original position. Here, the unused yarn is always placed on the wrong side of the fabric. That is, the side with the purl texture. You're working this row on the wrong side of the fabric, so place it on the side facing you. Continue knitting afterward. Finish the area for color 2. Make the first stitch at the color change a bit tighter. After finishing the area for color 2, switch to color 1 and continue knitting downward. Similarly, grab the yarn of color 1 from below color 2. And start knitting. The dropped yarn stays on the wrong side of the fabric. Here, the two yarns effectively cross each other. Once the last stitch is done, the second row is completed. Continue with the third row. First, turn your work. At the same time, pay attention to tidying up the yarn. After turning, everyone should remember to sort out the yarn. I won't remind you repeatedly about this later. Next, refer to the chart. Use color 1 at the edge. Knit until you reach the position of the K2 tog in the pattern chart. When you reach the corresponding position, continue knit 2 stitches together. From now on, we'll simply call it K2 tog. Insert the right needle into 2 loops on the left needle. Knit 1 stitch. Complete the K2 tog. Continue with a yarn over. Then refer to the chart. Keep knitting until the next K2 tog. When you reach the corresponding position, work the K2 tog. Continue referring to the chart. Finish knitting the color 1 area on this end. After finishing the color 1 area, Continue knitting the color 2 area below. Pick up the color 2 yarn from beneath the current tail end. Then start knitting. Similarly, the two ends of the thread cross each other. Behind, continue to knit downward. Finish knitting the color 2 area. Leave the color 1 yarn in its original position. This is also the wrong side of the fabric. After completing, you'll reach the color 1 area on this end. Pick up the color 1 yarn from underneath. Then continue knitting the remaining part according to the chart. Finish with the last stitch. That concludes the method for row 3. Next, knit row 4. The method is identical to row 2. Start by using the color 1 yarn at the edge. Complete the corresponding section. Then pick up the color 2 yarn from below. Complete the corresponding area. Make the first stitch a little tighter. After finishing, pick up color 1 from underneath. Knit the remaining area. That concludes the method for row 4. For the rest of the body rows, simply knit back and forth using the methods from the first 2 rows. Whenever you change colors, always pick up the color you need to change to from underneath the current yarn tail, at the boundary between the 2 colors. The yarn will create a crossing texture. The color 2 area will gradually shift to the right. The number of stitches for color 1 at both ends will also change accordingly. If the stitch count shifts by more than 3 stitches, you need to perform yarn pressing and carrying. Let me demonstrate the method here. Yarn pressing and carrying can occur on both the right side and wrong side rows. I'll demonstrate the right side row first, and I'll use 3 stitches as an example, and the stitch pattern can be random. Everyone can learn the method first. Then later, combine it with actual situations for knitting. On my sample, I finished the current row with color 1 in position. Moving forward, I need to use color 2 for knitting. Here, the color 2 at the bottom is 3 stitches away from the working position. So, take color 2 directly from underneath color 1, and pull it over. Here, switching colors still involves taking the yarn from underneath the working yarn. Then start with 1 stitch first. After stitching, pull the fabric slightly to lay it flat. Then continue with the second stitch. While knitting here, insert the hook. And you can pick up the place where the yarn was pulled below. Placing it onto the straight needle. Then continue knitting. Pull the yarn out from underneath the pulled yarn. Release the loop. This completes one stitch. At the same time, it brings the yarn from the back a bit. This is equivalent to performing one tuck stitch. When you encounter stitch counts of 4 or 5 stitches or more, you can knit 1 to 2 stitches, and perform one tuck stitch. The method for tuck stitches is the same. Here, I'll demonstrate it again. First, insert into the loop. Then pick up the yarn marks. Continue with normal knitting. Pick up the yarn from below the marked lines. This tucks the yarn again. This is the method for tucking yarn on a right side row. Next, I will demonstrate the method for bringing the yarn on a right side row. Here, we finish the current color 2 section. To continue, you need to knit 3 more stitches with color 2. So you need to bring the lower color 1 while knitting. Start by knitting the first stitch below. Then pick up color 1 from underneath. Cross the yarns. Then continue knitting 1 stitch with color 2. This completes bringing the yarn once. Let me demonstrate it again. Pick up the yarn from below. Cross the 2 yarns. Then knit accordingly. This completes bringing the yarn again. The same applies when you encounter 4 or 5 stitches or more. You can knit 1 to 2 stitches and bring the yarn once. The method for bringing the yarn is the same. Just cross the 2 yarns. This is the method for bringing yarn on the right side row. Next, I will explain the method for bringing yarn on the wrong side row. Here it's identical to bringing the yarn on the right side row. First, knit 1 stitch downward. Then pick up the yarn you need to bring from underneath. Cross the 2 yarns. Continue using the corresponding color. Knit 1 stitch downward. That completes 1 yarn carry. Let me demonstrate it again. Pick up the corresponding yarn from underneath. Cross the 2 yarns. Then knit as usual. Another yarn carry is now completed. This is the method for carrying yarn on the wrong side row. Moving on, I will explain the technique for pressing the yarn on the wrong side row. Again, here we use 3 stitches as an example. From underneath the working yarn, pull the corresponding yarn over. Then knit 1 stitch first. Give the fabric a tug to lay it flat. When knitting the next stitch, press the yarn down. Place the marked lines above the right needle. Then continue knitting as normal. When doing a yarn over and draw through, go underneath the marked line and pick up the yarn. This completes 1 pressed stitch. I'll demonstrate the method again. Insert into the loop. Place the marked lines above the needle. Knit as usual. When doing a yarn over and draw through, pick up from underneath the marked line. This is how you press stitches on a wrong side row. Whether carrying or pressing yarn, all the yarn tails will be on the back side of the fabric. Moving forward, everyone can refer to the chart. Follow the method demonstrated earlier. Knit the corresponding row numbers for the body section. If you run out of yarn during this process, you'll need to join a new yarn. Simply tie a knot with the corresponding yarn to join it. There will also be decreases in the rows of the body section. The decrease methods have all been demonstrated before. Just follow the chart to knit. This concludes the explanation for the body area. Next, we'll move on to knitting the shoulder parts. The left and right shoulder parts are knitted separately. The left and right here are distinguished based on the actual left and right when wearing. Start by continuing the yarn from the body section. Pick up the corresponding area to knit the left shoulder parts. After completing it, knit the right shoulder parts. Here you need to cast on again. Knit this separate part individually. Then merge it with the remaining part of the body and continue knitting upwards. During this process, you need to bind off stitches at the collar position to form the neck opening. At the shoulder position, you need to use short rows to create the shoulder part sloping. Let's start by knitting the left shoulder parts. Here, I'm demonstrating with a small swatch. Continue with the yarn from the body. Use color 1 and color 2 from the edge. Finish the number of stitches required for row 1. In practice, when you're knitting, match the corresponding pattern. Repeat. I won't knit the pattern here for demonstration purposes. After completing the last stitch, leave the rest unknitted. Proceed to knit row 2. Turn the work. This row begins with binding off stitches. We will work this row on the wrong side, so bind off purlwise. First, knit 2 purl stitches correspondingly. Then pick up the previous stitch, cover the next stitch. Bind off 1 stitch. The loop on the right needle is the loop of the first square after binding off. Continue from the second square and work the corresponding stitch pattern. Finish the one edge stitch from the previous row. The second row is now completed. Move on to the third row. Follow the chart to complete the stitches of the previous row. You can finish this part on your own. After completing it, start the fourth row. You need to bind off 2 stitches at the beginning. Again, for the wrong side row, bind off purlwise. Start by knitting 2 purl stitches. Then bind off 1 stitch. Knit 1 purl stitch. Bind off 1 stitch. At this point, the loop on the right needle is the loop of the first square after binding off. Continue from the second square and work the corresponding stitch pattern. Finish the last stitch. The fourth row is now completed. All subsequent binding off will be done on the wrong side rows. Some rows do not require binding off. Just knit evenly. For the last few rows, short rows will need to be worked on the right side. After completing all the knitting, you need to do a bind off. Here, all stitches from the last row will be bound off, and this binding off will be done on the right side. You'll need to bind off knitwise. Use the color of the edge from the last row for binding off. For the other color, just leave a long tail and cut the yarn. Below, I will demonstrate the method for working short rows on the right side, as well as the technique for binding off at the end. When actually knitting, please pay attention to changing colors according to the pattern chart. Meanwhile, this demonstration focuses on the method everyone can learn first. Then refer to the diagram for knitting later. Please watch the demonstration. Leaving stitches on the right side for short rows, you can see that 6 rows need to be worked in short rows here. The first row is worked on the wrong side. Leave 5 stitches at the end unworked. I have already finished knitting. The second row is knit on the right side. First, knit a stitch with a yarn over like this on the right needle. Then slip 1 stitch. Next, knit 1 by 1 accordingly. Finish this row. After it's done, continue with the third row. At the end of this row, except for the initial 5 stitches, you also need to leave 4 stitches unknitted. Pay attention. The yarn over is not included. After completing it, continue with the fourth row. The knitting method is identical to the second row. First, make a yarn over like this. Then slip 1 stitch. Next, refer to the pattern and knit the rest of the row as usual. For the 5th row coming up, leave 4 stitches at the ending. Similarly, the yarn over doesn't count. The knitting method for the 6th row is also the same as the second row. I will continue and finish these 2 rows. Now, I have finished the short rows section. One more row needs to be knitted in the end. To eliminate the row difference, short fur, eliminating rows, work into each stitch with purl. Work until finish 1 stitch before the yarn over. After completing, swap the yarn over with the one on the left side. Then work them together as one purl stitch. Each time you reach the yarn over position, you should swap the yarn over with the one on the left side first. Then combine and knit a purl stitch. Continue to finish this row. Now, the eliminate rows is already complete. You can take a look. This is the effect on the right side. This is the effect on the wrong side. Bind off knitwise. Usually after completing the stitching stitch. You can use this method on the right side. In this situation when binding off, knit 2 stitches first. Then pick up the previous stitch with the left needle. Cover the next stitch. This way, you've bound off 1 stitch. Continue by knitting 1 more knit stitch. Then pick up the previous stitch with the left needle. Cover the next stitch. This way, you've bound off another stitch. I'll continue binding them off. Each time, bind off knitwise. Now there's only 1 loop left. Enlarge the loop. Then leave a tail and fasten off the yarn. The length of the tail depends on the specific situation of the fabric. Usually, reserving about 10 centimeters is sufficient. Pass the yarn tail through the loop. Pull tight. This is the method for binding off knitwise. Regardless of which binding off method you use, the technique for securing the yarn tail at the end can refer to the demonstration here, and after everything is completed, if there isn't a specific long tail reserved for sewing, these short tails can be woven in on the wrong side following the fabric's texture. Try not to affect the right side texture. When weaving in the ends, you can weave in the entire tail completely. Once the knitting is done, finally, secure the yarn tails. If there's no knot at the tail position, then tie a knot at an adjacent position. Then weave it in following the wrong side texture of the fabric. You can weave in a few more stitches. Note, weave in the tails within the corresponding color area. If there was already a knot at the tail position, then simply weave it into the wrong side of the fabric. Everyone, handle the tails based on the actual situation. At this point, the left shoulder part section is complete. Next, we'll explain the right shoulder parts. It is divided into two sections for knitting. Start by casting on and knitting the first section, then merge with the remaining body area to knit the second section. Before knitting here, you need to place the remaining loops of the body on hold. Then cast on again to knit the first section. Use the cable cast on method. After completing it, knit back and forth in stocking stitch pattern. I will demonstrate the method of placing stitches on hold next, as well as the cable cast on method. Afterwards, refer to the chart to complete the first section. Please watch the demonstration. Here, I'll demonstrate the technique of placing stitches on hold using a swatch. First, take a piece of yarn slightly longer than the loops. Thread it into a sewing needle. Then pick up each loop from bottom to top. After completing, tie off the yarn with a knot. This completes the process of placing stitches on hold. First, take the corresponding yarn. Make a slip knit with the yarn. If there are no special circumstances, start by leaving about 10 centimeters of yarn. This makes it convenient to weave in the ends later. Pick up a straight needle or one end of a circular needle with your left hand, and insert it into the loop. Slightly tighten it. This is the first stitch. Hold another straight needle or the other end of the circular needle with your right hand, in a pencil grip. Wrap the yarn once around your right pinky. Gently pinch the yarn between your ring finger and middle finger. Place the yarn between your index finger and middle finger. This is the proper posture for knitting. After completing the first stitch, place the right needle above the yarn. Insert downwards into the loop on the left needle. Use your right index finger to guide the yarn. Yarn over and pick up the yarn. And place it onto the left needle. Don't pull the yarn too tight. Otherwise, it will be hard to pick up stitches later. This is the second stitch. Continue casting on. Place the right needle above the yarn. Insert downwards between these two stitches. Yarn over. Pick up the yarn and place it onto the left needle. This is the third stitch. Pay attention, don't pull the yarn too tight. Continue casting on. Insert between the loops. Yarn over and draw through. This is the fourth stitch. Every time you insert the hook, it should be between two loops. Continue cable cast on stitches. Cast on until you reach the required number of stitches. This is the method for cable cast on stitches. That's it for the first section. There's no need to fasten off the yarn here. Continue knitting the second section. Here, I'm demonstrating with a small swatch. First, continue with the yarn from the first section. Finish knitting the area of the first section. Once done, pick up the body. Take the held loops. Transfer them to the other end of the needle. Insert the needle from the edge inward here. Untie or cut the yarn tail of the held stitches. Transfer the loops back onto the needle one by one. Pay attention to follow the direction of the loops while transferring. After transferring, check the stitch count. If the stitch count is correct, remove the yarn tail of the held stitches. Then, continue with the yarn tail from the first section. Start picking up the loops on the left needle and knit downward. Here, you actually need to knit 2 stitches downward with the current color. Simply pick up the loops and knit. Then, change colors before the body. Keep the yarn tail for the color change. You can directly switch colors. Then, refer to the chart and complete this row. Similarly, I am not knitting any patterns here. Everyone knit according to your actual situation. After completing one stitch on the edge of the body, the first row of the second section is now done. Then, pick up the area of this row, knit back and forth. After knitting part of the rows, you need to bind off stitches on one side of the neckline. Bind off only on the right side rows. Bind off knitwise. After binding off the corresponding number of stitches, the loop on the right needle is the loop of the first grid after binding off. Then, continue knitting from the second grid. For the last few rows, you will need to knit short rows on the left side. Once everything is finished, bind off on the right side. Bind off all stitches in the last row, then I'll demonstrate the method for short rows, with stitches left on the left side. Remember to pay attention to color changes when knitting. Everyone can learn this technique first. Please watch the demonstration. For the short rows on the left side, you can see that here you need to work 6 short rows. On the first row, knit on the right side. Leave 5 stitches at the end unknitted. I have already finished knitting it. On the second row, work on the wrong side. First, make a yarn over on the needle like this. Don't make the yarn over too loose. Then work 1 slip stitch. Next, work each purl stitch evenly. Finish knitting this row. After completing it, continue with the third row. At the end of this row, leave out the first 5 stitches. You also need to leave 4 more stitches unknitted. Pay attention, the yarn over does not count. After completing it, continue with the fourth row. The knitting method is identical to the second row. First, make a yarn over like this. Then work 1 slip stitch. Next, refer to the pattern and knit the rest of the row as usual. For the fifth row, you need to leave 4 stitches at the ending. Similarly, the yarn over doesn't count. The knitting method for the sixth row is also the same as the second row. I will continue and finish these 2 rows. Now, I have finished the short rows. Finally, one more row needs to be knitted to eliminate the row difference, which is abbreviated as eliminating rows. Start by knitting one by one accordingly. Keep knitting until finish the stitch before the yarn over. After completing that, combine the yarn over with the one on the left side, and knit them together as one knit stitch. Each time you reach the yarn over position later, you need to combine the yarn over with the stitch on the left and knit them together as a knit stitch. Continue and finish this row. Now, the row elimination is completed. You can take a look. This is the effect on the right side. This is the effect on the wrong side. Sometimes, to make the row counts match on both sides, you need to knit one more row. Everyone can follow the pattern chart specifically for knitting. At this point, the knitting of the right shoulder parts has been fully explained. Up to this point, the entire front piece's knitting has been completely covered. Next, we'll knit the back piece. The method is similar to that of the front piece. The intarsia knitting area is just slightly different. Here, it's still divided into the hem, the body, and the shoulder parts sections. The hem here is identical to the front piece's hem. After finishing the hem, switch colors to knit the body. Up until now, a single color has been used for knitting. In the final section's position, you need to use color 1 at both ends for knitting. Use color 2 to knit in the center. The situations you'll encounter during the knitting process, as well as how to handle them, have all been explained and demonstrated for the front piece. Refer directly to the chart to complete the hem and body sections of the back piece. After finishing, knit the shoulder parts. Here, short rows are required on both sides for the shoulder parts. You will still need to change colors during this process. First, leave stitches on the left side, and knit using short rows. Then, move to the right side, leave stitches, and knit using short rows. Then knit back and forth for a few rows. Afterward, you'll need to bind off for the neckline. Start by knitting the right shoulder part section. Here, continue leaving stitches on the right edge for short row knitting. On the left side near the neckline, you need to perform the bind off. Once everything is finished, bind off. Then reattach the yarn and pick up stitches at the neckline position to bind off some of the stitches. Continue knitting the left shoulder parts. Here, leave stitches on the left side of the fabric for short row knitting. Similarly, bind off on the neckline side. After finishing everything, bind off. Here, the only new method introduced is for attaching yarn and binding off. All other methods have been demonstrated on the front piece before. Now, I'll demonstrate this new method. Everyone can learn it first, and then refer to the chart for knitting. Please watch the demonstration. Then continue knitting the right shoulder before you start knitting. We need to bind off 9 stitches in the middle first. You can separate them with a stitch marker. Pick up the new yarn. Make a slip knot with the yarn. Slightly tighten the small loop. Start with 2 knit stitches. Then bind off 1 stitch. Knit 1 stitch. Bind off 1 stitch. When there is no special instruction, on the right side, you'll be binding off knitwise. Continue to bind off the remaining stitches. Keep in mind, when binding off the last loop, this stitch you're working on is the first stitch to the left of the bind off symbol. You need to refer to the pattern for the corresponding stitch technique. Here, we'll continue with knit stitches and bind off. Once done, start from the second stitch and finish this row. That's it for the explanation of the back body knitting at this point.